Does anyone need a tomahawk? Well, no. You don't need toilet paper either. Welcome back to OG's Danger Show.
0 North Mont, apartment 4, open 911 line. Any home units at 21779 and RD 457.
So recently I did a review of the Toor Knives Krypteia carry knife. Well, soon after that video published, Toor Knives contacted me and asked what I'd like to review next. Of all the cool knives in their catalog, the one thing that kept catching my eye was their tomahawk. Well, a few days later, what shows up in the mail? But a Toor Knives Tomahawk. Now, we can all agree that for the most of us, a tomahawk is about as useful as tits on a turtle. We carry knives and some of us carry guns. And we use tools from a toolbox to fix things, but what real practical use is there for something like a tomahawk? While I set out to prove I needed a tomahawk, I came away from this test glad that I had one, but I'm fully convinced that unless you were Mel Gibson fighting off hordes of bumbling redcoats, you could probably survive a modern catastrophe without a tomahawk. And although it's popular amongst millennials to be able to throw a tomahawk, I will be the first to tell you that the double recurve shape of this handle doesn't really lend itself to throwing this tomahawk. It's actually got a little design here on the end, like a little bird's head, that keeps the tomahawk secured in your grip while chopping or slashing with this thing. But after a while, I got the technique down, and I could stick the blade or the spike of this tomahawk in the wall every once in a while. That little bird's head protrusion towards the end prevents this thing from sliding out of your hand the way a throwing tomahawk should be designed. So this thing is not really designed to be thrown at a wooden wall, and I kind of figured that out pretty quick. And I'd also like to point out that after throwing this tomahawk at the wooden wall a few times, the thing actually came apart. I hadn't tightened down the screws, and the G10 side scales on this tomahawk actually came unscrewed from all of the bouncing off of this wooden wall and came apart. Fortunately, I found a tool over my truck and was able to reassemble this -1 screw here in the middle, and so I need to go back to the hardware store and get a replacement screw. The original piece is lost out there deep in a pile of leaves. But to be fair, this is not the fault of the tomahawk or Toor Knives. They sent me a perfectly functioning tomahawk. I would recommend that if you order one of these that you take some Loctite and lock down those little screws, but this is not designed to be thrown at a dang wall. So it was not the fault of the tool itself. It was the fault of the other tool who was throwing the tomahawk against the wall. Let's put on some jazzy music here, and I'm going to run you through a quick little montage of some of the different objects that I cut apart with this. I just want to show you some of the fine cutting ability of this blade, if you hold the handle up close, as well as some of the chopping and sheer cutting power of this tomahawk. I was actually rather impressed with how sharp this little thing was. Okay, buckle up. Let's take a look at some of the objects that we cut with this tomahawk. And in the meantime, I'm going to give you some cool tunes that everyone on the internet seems to think are unnecessary in a gun and knife review. So I'm sure you're going to hate this part. Although lightweight, this little tool is plenty strong enough to be pressed into service as a breaching tool for those of you who carry around an active shooter response kit. Because most of the weight is in the head, this little tomahawk transfers a decent amount of force to the blade or the spike when you swing it. And speaking of the blade, the tomahawk has a tapered flat grind blade that keeps it light, but still allows for a razor sharp edge that can be easily touched up with whetstone in the field. The spike on the opposite side of the head is a great breaching or prying tool. There's no chance this thing is going to bend or break under pressure. It's very, very tough. You'll notice that the blade on the Toor Knives Tomahawk is curved instead of the traditional flat-faced blade that you find on most tomahawks. This curved blade design helps act as a rocker, which gives you increased leverage when you are prying. The double recurve handle is kind of an industry norm now with most modern tomahawk designs, and this curved profile transfers most of the force of a swing into the cutting or the piercing portion of the head, much more so than if the handle was a simple straight bar. The handle itself is a full tang design, just like their knives. One solid piece of steel means you're not going to smack this tomahawk on a log and have the head pop off. You can see how the G10 scales are custom fitted to the handle, and they're bolted down over this strip of cushioning polymer. Again, just like their entire knife line. These little details are what separate quality cutting tools like this Tomahawk from the SOG and the other Walmart brand Tomahawks that you might find in the camping section. You can feel the difference in the build quality just by picking this thing up off the table. It is no toy. It feels like a serious weapon despite its compact size and light weight. Like all Toor Knives products, these Tomahawks are made right here in the United States, from the San Diego area specifically. They're made by combat veterans and they're tested with active duty troops around the world. So I think we've established that the average Joe doesn't need a Tomahawk, but if you have put together any type of a bug-out bag or a survival or emergency kit, or like me, you're in law enforcement and have a small go bag for active shooter incidents, you just might find a tool like this handy. I feel confident that with this light little tool stowed in my patrol car, I could grab it and get through the doors of most structures in a relatively short amount of time. Although I didn't get it on camera, I was easily able to cut the seatbelt of an old car that was parked on the range too. Breaking window glass to help rescue a person is a no-brainer with a tool like this. And did I mention it would make one badass backup weapon to your truck gun? Far more useful than a simple folding knife if you ever had to bet your life on it. I'm going to wrap up this review. I very much appreciate you guys stopping by. I want to mention one thing too. I'm going to be giving away the Toor Knives Krypteia Knife to one of the Patreon members, a randomly drawn member, here in the next couple of weeks. So if you're not already a Patreon member and you'd like to join up, help support OG's Danger Show, I'd very much appreciate your support. And one of you lucky Patreon donors is going to win this Krypteia Knife made by Toor Knives and featured right here on OG's Danger Show. There's a link to my Patreon page in the description section of this video. Thank you guys very much for stopping by. You guys be safe out there and stay armed where you are legally allowed to do so, even if that means with a tomahawk. Until next time, OG out.